Honestly, I think everyone was kind of excited about the return of Tamio and expecting a reprint of Tamio the Moon Sage. But instead, in Eldritch Moon, we get a new Planeswalker in the form of Tamio the Field Researcher. Honestly, I think this is pretty interesting, but the only issue is it seems like it really has to function off of creatures. The good news is it can be your opponent's creatures too, as that first ability, you can actually draw cards off your opponent's creatures dealing damage to you. You can also tap them, which, if you don't want them to damage you, that's also fine and dandy by using that -2. And that ultimate is basically just an omniscience on an emblem, which is sweet, but it's pretty late game, and unlike omniscience, you're not going to be able to cheat it into play and get that effect immediately. Still, it's a really sweet card, and I think it can see constructed potential. It's just like I say, you do need creatures for it to really work and really benefit, because it's going to be hard getting value off it otherwise. Surprisingly, the other mythic rare in the multicolor section is, or one of them at least, is Grim Flare. Honestly, I don't think this card is terrible, but I don't think it's mythic rare powerful. It does give you some nice draw filtering, and it can be really powerful with Delirium. I can see why at 4/4 for 2 mana is really good. It is very powerful, and there are not very many creatures for 2 mana that do have 4 power. But still, you do need Delirium for this to get as powerful as it needs to be, and a 2/2 with Trample is kind of silly unless you can pump it somehow. To help the zombie tribe along their way come the mad scientists, or I guess they're scientists, that they seem to have a fascination with dead bodies. Brother and sister, Gisa and Geralf, allowing you to mill your deck to get zombies in your graveyard and cast them once a turn. Surprisingly enough, I felt like this was a perfect attempt for Wizards to make another meld creature. I mean, you can have Geralf and Gisa meld together to form Geralf, the big ugly thingamajigger thing. I'm sure. Why couldn't you just kill those two people off? Nobody cared about them. We wanted to have the angels slay the Eldrazi. Why did you kill them? Why did you do that? I would have been A-okay if this Brazilla thing spawned from Gissa and Geralf. But why couldn't you let the angels live? I think everyone liked those angels a lot more than Gissa and Geralf. Despite the fact that werewolves everywhere over Innistrad are going absolutely insane, now that Eldrazi are everywhere, apparently Ulrich of the Crownheart is the only one who has maintained his sanity. This creature reminiscent of, I guess you could say, kind of Huntmaster of the Fells, is pretty good. I think a lot of people really wanted there to be kind of a legendary werewolf to be playable on EDH, and honestly, I don't think this is an awful card. It's just the problem with werewolves in EDH, or at least the classic ones, was everyone in EDH is constantly casting spells, so you need a card to transform your werewolves, or you have to purposely not cast spells, or hope that no one else has a spell in addition to that. But still, I don't think Ulrich is a bad card. I think it could potentially see play. I don't recommend playing werewolves in EDH, and I've actually seen that happen, or seen werewolves been played in multiplayer games as well as EDH, and it's just, it rarely goes well. I'll just say that much. Moving on, for more toys for the humans deck, we have the Heron's Grace Champion, which is a 3/3 with lifelink and flash, but it also pumps all your humans. It really seems like we're getting a lot of effects these days that pump a lot of humans. After all, I mean, we had just got the Hamlet Captain reprinted, and this, and on top of that, seems like it'll really push that deck over the top. Spellcaller seems like the ideal creature for a control deck in matchups where you're facing off against a deck that doesn't use a lot of removal. You can counter just about anything you want and get a creature out of it. The only problem is that when the Spellcaller leaves play, they'll have the opportunity to cast that spell once again. Another thing important to note about Spellcaller is you can actually get rid of spells like Abrupt Decay because it doesn't counter it outright. Therefore, this could very well see some play in formats outside of Standard. Frankly, I really like this card, but like I say, it's usually only good in matchups that don't run a whole lot of removal. So you probably don't want to run it in control mirrors, or probably against combo decks that don't use a whole lot of interaction. You know, it's about time we got a card with Hellbent and Madness. I mean, it seems like those mechanics go hand in hand, and we got it in the form of Bloodhall Priests. Honestly, I can't really say how playable this is. I mean, it does seem like there are a lot of pieces in the set for a red-black vampire deck in Standard, and this may be like the big meaty creature, meaty mid-range creature we need in that deck to really finish us off. It does seem like, in addition to all the creatures with trample and evasion and pump, that there's a lot of tools here to make red-black vampires pretty viable. So I would not count this thing out, especially in Standard. It is a 4/4, however, so I wouldn't also be surprised if this was able to make a transition into other formats, especially because it has Madness for less than its mana cost, and therefore you could probably cut corners and get it in there. You could probably run this in synergy with something like Liliana of the Veil. Ride Down was not the card we wanted to see reprint, Wizards. I mean, I think everyone would have been really happy to see Lightning Helix in this set, but I guess you just really like to crush everyone's hopes and dreams. Mercurial Geist just seems like a really bad Wee Dragonauts. I mean, you could argue that in a format like Modern, you could, if you hold off a turn and you didn't get anything started, you could have more cards in your hand than you would play Wee Dragonauts on turn 3. But even so, by then, it's kind of hard to put that card together, considering there's a lot of hand tech and really fast combos in that format. Morn Willow really reminds me of Dregmangler from the Return to Ravnica set. It doesn't have anything like the scavenge ability, but if you have Delirium, it can make your creatures really hard to block. Although, you're probably going to run this in an aggro deck. I feel like this Delirium is kind of hard to achieve unless you have some way of milling yourself or getting a lot of cards in the graveyard as fast as possible. If you love long, casual, grindy games or games where you run a lot of tokens, Campaign of Vengeance may be the card that you are looking for. After all, it will basically give all of your guys an extra power and drain your opponent a lot of life. Now, it sort of reminds me of a Righteous Cause in a way, except it actually hurts your opponent. For formats like EDH, I feel like this is a very appropriate card. Or if you have some way to take multiple combat phases, that's definitely going to benefit you a lot with this card. Gearreach Sanitarium can essentially be considered I guess in a way, a worse Mikakoro Center of the Sea. Unlike Mikakoro, Gearreach Sanitarium actually makes you discard a card, or makes both players discard a card, which in this format can be good and it can be bad. If you know you play Madness, then it's definitely good because you can potentially get to cast a Madness spell. But if you know that you don't play it and just try to play it for extra reach, and you know your opponent plays Madness, then it can really backfire on you. But it's still great at what it does, and like I say, it can be very, very beneficial if you know what you're doing. Next land is actually really interesting, and I also feel like this land could very well see play in Modern, considering how much hand attack is in that format. If on the play, you can drop Nephalia Academy or turn 1, and all your opponent's discard and hand attack will be nowhere near as good as you'll have the option to draw it again. Pretty sweet, if I dare say so myself. I'm surprised a card like this hasn't been made, considering so many strategies in Modern and Legacy have functioned around cards like Thoughtseize and Cabal Therapy and all those different cards like that. This card may very well change the way we play Modern. I wouldn't be surprised. However, on the draw, this card is a lot worse, considering your opponent will have the opportunity to take a card. But even so, it's really terrific, and I just feel like this will change the way a lot of people play Modern. I'm sure somebody will think of something to make this work, and it's just really great. Considering there's not a whole lot of this card in Standard right now, this probably won't see a whole lot of play in Standard, but still, that's a really wonderful card, and if you know you go up against all these decks that run hand attack, this is definitely something you may want to consider running. It's definitely a solid card, and I really like it a lot.